Thanks, Daniel. There were about 100 slides that he didn't get to. So hopefully we get to hear Daniel speak again sometime soon. This is a set of hair clippers designed and manufactured in the United States from imported parts. I did an autopsy going from the packaging to the guts a few weeks ago, and it wasn't hard to find what I was looking for. A plastic motor mount. This is where these clippers are going to break. They're not Wall's cheapest model, but just one step up the product line, which is their entry-level professional series clipper. This motor mount and power contact would have been made of insulated metal and not plastic. It sucks when things break. For that reason, repair often gets left out of design discourse. I'm Derrick Mead, and I'd like to fix that. Now, you might think I'm about to start blaming designers, but I'm not letting all of you off so easily. Everyone, users, or all of us, in other words, has some power to make change for ourselves by getting involved with fixing our own things. I've been curious about how things break and get fixed for a long time, and I think it might be because of where I grew up, on a farm in upstate New York. This is a broken Seppi flail mower, and without getting into too much gory detail, it chops brush in the orchard. Practically every moving part of this machine was repaired or replaced over the course of its 25-year life. I love the things we're surrounded by, and I'm fascinated by materiality in general, but I've always felt like we've got too much of everything, even the good stuff. I didn't want to become a designer myself for this exact reason, but as a design critic and writing about fixing existing things, it was like discovering a get-out-of-jail-free card. The whole idea of repair has become fashionable within certain circles lately. DIY is huge too, from iFixit, where you actually do it yourself, to Etsy, where you pay somebody else to do it for you. But the majority of material culture is focused on the shiny and the new, and so is the reporting that gets done on it. This is not true of the Seppi. This mower is not fashionable, even though it's orange and was made in Italy. It's a piece of capital equipment, something a business buys and then uses to make money. In general, capital goods are designed with repair in mind. Your hermetically sealed new iPad? Not so much. This thing is designed to be bought and used and not to be fixed. Which doesn't necessarily stop people from trying. iPhones and iPads can be fixed if you have the right parts, tools, and know-how. This is the Eye Hospital, which now occupies the back of the Shakespeare & Company bookstore on Broadway. We do seek out repair for the expensive things that we're attached to. Shoes, jewelry, and increasingly, our Apple electronics. A business card on the 6 train last week suggested that miniature stormtroopers could potentially tackle fixing your iPhone. Obsolescence is a big issue when it comes to fixing electronics, but it's not just that, right? It's also us. We like new things, and it's often easier to buy new than to make the effort to seek out a repair. And sometimes when we do set out to fix something, we find that it was designed to defeat us. I went looking for some systemic causes underlying the situation to try to figure out how so many of our belongings got this way. The search took me first to underwriters' laboratories, and UL is concerned mostly with consumer safety. But making electrical appliances safer has often had the unintended result of making them more difficult to fix. I went to a lot of dumps, which were crammed with appliances and electronics that worked but were simply outmoded. Many had one tiny, inexpensive component that had failed, just like the hair clippers we looked at a moment ago. I also went to repair shops, and repairmen tended to think of designers as somewhat nefariously minded enemies, along the lines of they're always up to something. Industrial designers didn't tend to sympathize with repairers much either. Their motivation, first and foremost, is usually to a client, and a client who's interested in sales, not fixability. The industrial designer Scott Henderson is best known for these ceramic salt and pepper shakers, but he's responsible for a lot of home goods you might be familiar with. He told me the things he designs couldn't be made any easier to repair because of material constraints, plastics just don't fix very easily, and the demands of consumer safety that need to be achieved at very low retail prices in order for these manufacturers to stay competitive. I talked to all sorts of people in these different places, and none of them were very optimistic about the state of repair and product design today. This is a strange place for material culture to have ended up. We don't have a lot of time for history, so I'm going to let this repaired 150-year-old grain shovel speak for me. Fixing our things used to be natural, practically inevitable. Our contemporary capacity to choose not to fix things is just about unprecedented. There is some cause for optimism, however. I'm glad Daniel made that point too. A few younger products designers are doing exciting things with repairability squarely in their sights. They're using the issue to tackle sustainability and business ethics at the same time. video we just saw was also by the Agency of Design, who made the toaster we saw a moment ago. And the Agency of Design is Adam Patterson, Rich Gilbert, and Matthew Laws. They've produced a whole series of prototype toasters, each of which addresses a different problem of sustainability in appliance manufacturing. The Optimus is the most successful, aesthetically and practically speaking. It's designed to be expensive, but last forever, and be super easy to fix should it ever break. The Pragmatist toaster is designed to be modular, to facilitate repair and eventually recycling. Its slots separate to be returned to its manufacturer for repairs when each breaks down. The Realist toaster is designed to be as cheap as possible and assumes that it'll be thrown out when it breaks. That's not the end of its life, though. It's designed to be automatically disassemblable when placed in a vacuum, so its metal and plastic parts can be easily separated and recycled. And this is a video of how that vacuum joint works. Ta-da! These designs are only prototypes, remember. The Agency of Design has made no headway interesting manufacturers because of concerns about their bottom line. Not only does making products more fixable increase the cost of their production, the company that produces them stands to lose out on future sales too, right? I don't think so. It generally costs more to own and operate an appliance than it does to purchase it. One $50 toaster that lasts 10 years is cheaper than three $20 toasters that kick the bucket after 18 months. And this chart doesn't even mention repair. But we should. Repair can make a difference in how connected we all feel to material culture. It seems vital that the conversation about sustainability take on some urgency. Fixing things is a way to make it personal and affirmative, and not accusational. The Fixers Collective holds monthly workshops in an art gallery. Anyone who's interested can bring in something broken and get access to tools and help. Taking responsibility for our belongings can empower and ennoble us. Repairing more of our things more often has meaningful connotations for employment. Even if you can't fix anything, some of your neighbors probably can. It's a skilled, experience-driven activity, and so it's resistant to outsourcing. That makes it an important prospect in terms of stable, ongoing employment for people at a variety of income levels. But it's not all just about economics. It has to do with pride and reclaiming our connection and responsibility to the physical world. It has to come from all of us. The next time something of yours breaks, consider fixing before you just replace it. You'll be surprised at what you can learn. Thank you.